What if the world we know is only a fraction of a much older, hidden story? What if, long before our modern civilizations rose, colossal beings, giants, once roamed the earth? And if they did, why are they so carefully erased from our history books? You may have heard whispers of the Nephilim, strange beings mentioned briefly in ancient texts. But where does this mysterious word Nephilim first appear? And what secrets does it hold? As we dig deeper, we'll uncover clues buried in one of the world's most sacred and widely read books, the Bible. In particular, a strange passage from Genesis that has puzzled theologians, historians, and mystics alike for centuries. But this is not just a religious tale, it's a riddle that spans continents and cultures. From the myths of Mesopotamia to the stone temples of South America, from ancient Sumerian tablets to forbidden apocryphal texts, stories of giant beings appear again and again. And yet mainstream history remains silent. Why? Is it because these stories are merely symbolic? Or is there something more, a forgotten truth, deliberately obscured? Could it be that the Nephilim weren't just the stuff of legend, but remnants of a hybrid race born of divine and mortal blood? Were they fallen angels, interdimensional beings, or perhaps something far stranger? In this video we will explore the origins and meanings of the word Nephilim, the chilling account in Genesis that hints at divine intervention in human history, and the possibility that these beings weren't metaphorical, but physical, powerful, and very, very real. Get ready to descend into a realm where myth, theology, and forbidden archaeology collide. This is not just about giants. It's about who we are and what has been hidden from us. Let's begin. There is a passage in the book of Genesis that reads like a riddle tucked away in the folds of time, cryptic, unsettling, and unlike anything else in the Hebrew Bible. Genesis 6:1-4 speaks of a moment before the great flood, a time when the sons of God saw that the daughters of men were beautiful, and they took them as wives. And then, almost like a whisper in the margins, we are told, the Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God went to the daughters of humans and had children by them. They were the heroes of old, men of renown. But who or what were the Nephilim? The word Nephilim stems from the Hebrew root, enpol, meaning to fall, often translated as the fallen ones. Yet this simple etymology opens the door to a maze of interpretations. Were they fallen angels? Fallen from grace, from heaven, from a divine realm beyond comprehension? Or does fallen refer not to their descent, but to their colossal might, casting down enemies in war, bringing cities and empires to their knees? In many translations, the Nephilim are described as giants towering, powerful beings whose presence alone reshaped the world around them. But this too raises more questions than answers. Giants, born of divine beings and mortal women. Was this the earliest myth of demigods? Or something more unsettling, a race of hybrid entities born from the union of heaven and earth, meant to bridge two incompatible realms? And who were these sons of God? In traditional Christian interpretation, this phrase is often softened, explained away as noble men or descendants of Seth. But in ancient Jewish texts, and many pre-Christian writings, the term Ben Elohim clearly refers to celestial beings, divine figures who once walked among humans. If so, then the Genesis account subtly implies a cosmic transgression, an act of forbidden union that forever altered the course of humanity. The implications are staggering. The Nephilim were not merely myths, they were consequences. A divine law had been broken, and the offspring of that disobedience, these men of renown, became living evidence of the blurring boundary between godhood and mortality. Yet, this disturbing tale is offered to us in mere verses, 4 short linetions, no justifications, as if the ancient scribes were reluctant to speak further, or were forbidden to do so. Why? Why would such a powerful narrative be condensed into obscurity? What else was known but not said? These questions have haunted theologians, mystics, and historians for centuries, and while the canonical Bible remains largely silent, other ancient texts do not. In the forbidden scrolls and lost writings of the early world, we find stories too bold, too terrifying, perhaps too true to be accepted by later institutions of faith. There is one such text, the Book of Enoch, a manuscript once revered and now condemned to the shadows of religious history. Within its pages, the tale of the Nephilim is not only expanded but transformed into a saga of divine rebellion, monstrous births, and cosmic judgment. What was so dangerous about these stories that they had to be silenced? Who were the Watchers, and why did their love for human women spark a divine war? And most haunting of all, did the Church bury these truths to protect the faithful or to protect itself? Let's journey deeper into the veiled records of forgotten scripture. Because the story of the Nephilim has only just begun. Hidden within the dusty pages of ancient texts lies a narrative so unsettling, so profound, that it was systematically silenced by the very institution that claims to safeguard spiritual truth. These are the stories not found in your average Sunday sermon, the tales of the Nephilim, the offspring of heavenly beings and human women, whispered through time in the mysterious Book of Enoch. Long before modern theology filtered and formalized what would become the canon of the Bible, ancient cultures spoke of Watchers, celestial entities who descended to earth, drawn not by divine mission, but by desire. According to the Book of Enoch, a group of 200 of these Watchers, led by a powerful being named Semjaza, made a pact atop Mount Hermon. Their goal was clear: to take human wives and father children that would become known as the Nephilim. These were no ordinary offspring. Described as giants, beings of immense strength and boundless hunger, the Nephilim were said to have consumed the resources of the earth, and when that wasn't enough, they turned to devouring mankind. But these stories were never meant to see the light of day. The Book of Enoch, once revered in various early Jewish and Christian sects, was suddenly cast aside, vanished from official doctrine. By the 4th century, it was effectively purged, deemed heretical and non-canonical by the early church. The question is, why? Was it the disturbing image of divine beings breaking cosmic laws? Or perhaps the notion that humanity's suffering might stem not only from its own fall, but from the meddling of higher intelligences? The implications were too vast, too disruptive to the established narrative. A church striving for control could not risk chaos in its carefully constructed theology. Centuries later, only whispers of Enoch's visions remain. But the idea of the Nephilim, these colossal hybrids, has proven impossible to erase. From Genesis 6:4's cryptic reference to giants in the earth, to ancient Mesopotamian myths of demigods and titans, the echoes are everywhere. It's as if history itself refuses to forget them. Yet the censorship raises an uncomfortable truth. If the church had the power to decide what humanity should and shouldn't know, what else has been buried beneath the surface of official history? Which leads us to a far more tangible mystery, one not just of ancient words, but of bones and dust. What if the legends of the Nephilim weren't merely metaphorical? What if someone, somewhere, actually found physical evidence of their existence? And more importantly, what happened to it? It began, as many mysteries do, with a newspaper article. The date was June 8, 1894. The Helena Independent in Montana ran a story that would quietly echo through the halls of forgotten history. Giant skeleton unearthed 18 feet tall. The report described the discovery of an enormous human-like skeleton in a burial mound. The bones were said to be yellowed with age, the skull massive, the jaw large enough to fit over a normal man's face. And then silence. This was not an isolated event. Throughout the 19th and early 20th centuries, newspapers across the United States reported similar findings. 7-foot femurs, double rows of teeth, skulls with strange cranial features, even stone sarcophagi containing multiple gigantic skeletons. These were not tabloids or fringe publications, they were mainstream outlets. Ohio, Arizona, New York, and California, every corner of the country seemed to yield the remains of a race lost to time. But today, these reports are buried, not in the ground, but in the footnotes of academic discomfort. Why? Many of these discoveries were said to have been turned over to one institution, the Smithsonian. Yes, the same Smithsonian that houses the history of the American people is often named in these reports as the final recipient of these anomalous skeletons. Yet, when the researchers ask to see the remains, the answer is always the same: they don't exist. Officially, no such skeletons were ever cataloged, stored, or acknowledged. Some whisper of a systematic cover-up, a quiet but deliberate effort to erase the possibility that a race of giants once walked the earth. Could it be that these findings threatened the established narrative of human history? Or is it simply a case of exaggerated journalism from an era hungry for spectacle? Let's not forget the era we're speaking of, the mid to late 1800s, when America was expanding westward. Frontier towns were full of wonder and myth, and newspapers competed fiercely for attention. Was the 18-foot skeleton just a sensational story to sell copies? Or was there more to it? Certain artifacts lend weight to the idea that these reports were more than myth. Enormous tools, oversized weapons, and impossibly large burial sites have all been unearthed. Native American oral traditions speak of giant beings who lived before the current age of man, sometimes as enemies, sometimes as gods. Curiously, these myths echo global stories from the Bible to the Mahabharata, tales of titans, fallen angels, and hybrid offspring. One has to ask, were these giants purely metaphorical, or were they literal? If so, what happened to them? Where are the bones now? Some suggest natural decomposition. Others blame hoaxes, but more and more independent researchers point to intellectual gatekeeping, the quiet dismissal of anything that challenges mainstream anthropology. There's even a darker theory that these beings were not entirely human at all. Which brings us to a far more unsettling question. If these ancient skeletons were real, who or what were they? Were they the remnants of a lost race, or the evidence of something not of this earth? Could the biblical Nephilim, described as the offspring of the sons of God and the daughters of men, actually be the same beings whose bones were allegedly found beneath American soil? And if so, is there a connection between these giants and beings from the stars? Perhaps the real question isn't whether giants once walked the earth, but whether they ever truly left. What if the stories of giants were just the beginning? What if the ancient texts weren't speaking metaphorically, but historically? Because in the next chapter, we'll look at what might be the most controversial theory of all. Were the Nephilim not only real, but extraterrestrial? Long before telescopes gazed into the void of space, and before science dared to decode the language of DNA, ancient civilizations whispered of gods who descended from the heavens, beings not of this earth. The Sumerians, one of the oldest known civilizations, carved stories into clay tablets that speak of divine visitors they called the Anunnaki, those who from the heavens came down. But who were these sky-born entities, and why did they come? Enter Zecharia Sitchin, a controversial scholar whose interpretations of Sumerian texts sparked a firestorm in both academic and fringe circles alike. In his books, Sitchin proposed that the Anunnaki were not mythological gods at all, but flesh and blood extraterrestrials from a mysterious planet called Nibiru, hidden deep within our solar system. According to him, these beings came to Earth in search of gold, a metal they needed to stabilize their planet's atmosphere. But gold was not the only thing they took from Earth. Sitchin and those who followed his theory suggested that the Anunnaki manipulated early human DNA to create a new species, a hybrid race, part human, part something else. And here's where the story takes a darker, more cryptic turn. The ancient Hebrew text of Genesis speaks of strange beings called the Nephilim, often translated as giants or fallen ones. These entities, born of the union between the sons of God and the daughters of men, are described as mighty, fearsome, and extraordinary. Their very existence is said to have corrupted humanity, prompting the Great Flood. But are the Nephilim and the Anunnaki one and the same? Some researchers believe so. They point to eerie similarities. Both descended from the sky, both wielded immense knowledge and power, and both altered the course of human civilization. The Book of Enoch, a text excluded from the Bible, goes further, naming the Watchers, a group of 200 angels who defied divine law and descended to earth. These Watchers not only mated with human women, but also taught forbidden knowledge, weapon-making, sorcery, astrology. Their offspring, the Nephilim, were said to be monstrous giants who devastated the earth. The parallels between the Watchers and the Anunnaki are hard to ignore. Could these ancient myths be distorted memories of real events, extraterrestrial interventions, encoded in our oldest stories? Is it possible that the gods of antiquity were simply aliens in the eyes of early humanity? The idea may seem fantastical, but consider the sudden leaps in human development: agriculture, architecture, mathematics, astronomy, all emerging rapidly in the cradle of civilization as if sparked by an outside force. Some even speculate that the Anunnaki not only created humans, but also seeded elite bloodlines, hybrid dynasties, with access to esoteric knowledge, destined to rule. Could ancient stories of demigods and kings with divine right be remnants of this genetic manipulation? And what does that mean for us today? Modern science has begun to unlock secrets hidden in our DNA junk genes, unexplained insertions, and sequences with no known evolutionary origin. What if some of those anomalies are markers of something alien? But perhaps the most unsettling question of all is this: if these beings came once, did they ever truly leave? All across the ancient world, stories persist, tales of giants who walked the earth, of beings larger than life, feared and revered. From the deserts of Mesopotamia to the mountains of Scandinavia, from Vedic scriptures to forgotten Turkish epics, these legends endure. Why do so many cultures, separated by oceans and millennia, share the same obsession with giants? Could it be that these myths are more than cultural echoes? Are they memories, fragments of a collective human past that hint at a shared truth? Or perhaps a warning? Why do stories of giants echo across the mythologies of every ancient civilization? From the icy fjords of Scandinavia to the sun-drenched plains of Anatolia, from the sacred peaks of the Himalayas to the whispering ruins of ancient Greece, humanity has passed down tales of beings that walked the earth before us, towering, powerful, and terrifying. But were these merely metaphors or memories? In Norse mythology, they are called Tnar, primordial beings older than the gods themselves. They represent chaos, nature untamed, and the ancient forces that even Odin feared. The frost giant Ymir, whose slain body was used to craft the world, is no mere monster. He is the foundation of reality, a force so vast that from his flesh came land, from his bones the mountains, and from his blood the seas. Move southward, and you find the titans of Greek mythology. Predecessors to the Olympians, they were not just powerful, they were cosmic. Cronus devoured his own children to preserve his rule. Atlas was condemned to hold up the sky. These weren't bedtime stories, they were warnings, reminders, fragments of something we've forgotten or chosen to forget. In India, ancient Vedic texts speak of the Rakshasa, shape-shifting giants, cunning and cruel, who waged war against the divine order. Ravana, the 10-headed king of Lanka, was one such being. Though demonized, he was also a scholar, a devotee of Shiva, and a ruler of immense knowledge. The duality is striking. Not all giants were evil. Some were simply other. And in the heart of Central Asia, among the myths of the Turkic peoples, we find Tepeges, a fearsome cyclopean creature born of rape, cast out, then returned with vengeance. His story echoes that of Polyphemus from Homer's Odyssey, a lone-eyed giant who devours men and curses the hero. Why does the image of a single-eyed devourer appear in cultures that never met? Coincidence? Or something far deeper? Psychologists might call them archetypes, symbols embedded in the collective unconscious. But even Carl Jung, father of that very idea, questioned where these patterns truly come from. Are they the residue of ancient truths, buried beneath the sands of myth? Modern scholars dismiss the tales as metaphor. But what if they're not? What if these stories were attempts to explain a forgotten chapter of human history, a chapter filled with beings who walked taller, thought differently, and left scars on the earth itself? Throughout these stories, one theme repeats: giants are almost always the first. They precede the gods. They shape the world, and then, inevitably, they fall. But why? Why does every culture not only remember giants, but also remember their destruction? What were they? Where did they come from? And what did they do that was so terrible that the gods themselves rose to wipe them from the face of the earth? The answer, perhaps, lies not in the myths, but in a flood. Could it be that these giants, these Nephilim, as some ancient texts call them, were not just myths, but the cause of an ancient reckoning? That the Great Flood wasn't just divine wrath against human sin, but a desperate measure to cleanse a world corrupted by beings that were never meant to be. Let us turn to the oldest of flood stories, to whispers of forbidden unions, fallen watchers, and a world brought to the edge of annihilation. They walked the earth like shadows of gods, giants among mortals, feared and revered. The ancient texts call them Nephilim, beings born of divine rebellion and human frailty. Legends whisper that they were not merely men of great stature, but abominations who bent the laws of nature itself. But if the Nephilim were truly real, the question remains: what went so terribly wrong? In the days before the Great Flood, something was unraveling beneath the surface of the world. According to the Book of Genesis, the earth also was corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with violence. But what does corrupt truly mean here? Was it merely sin, or something more genetic? The Nephilim were said to be the offspring of the sons of God and the daughters of men, a cryptic phrase that has puzzled scholars for millennia. Some interpret the sons of God as fallen angels, entities who transgress divine law by crossing into the human realm. Their union with humanity brought forth creatures that did not belong, beings too powerful, too unnatural, too dangerous. The world they inhabited was no longer human, it was something else. The ancient world, infected by this hybrid bloodline, began to spiral into chaos. Violence spread like wildfire. Kingdoms fell under the sway of monstrous rulers with insatiable appetites for power, for worship, for destruction. Humanity, it seems, had become a footnote in its own story. So when the flood came, was it simply divine punishment for human wickedness? Or was it a targeted purge? Many ancient sources hint that the flood wasn't meant merely to cleanse humanity, but to exterminate something far older and more dangerous. In the Book of Enoch, a forbidden text once treasured by early mystics and now buried by mainstream theology, we find a disturbing claim that the Watchers, the fallen angels, were imprisoned, and their Nephilim offspring were to be destroyed by a deluge, not just drowned, but wiped from memory, erased from the genetic record. Yet something lingers. Whispers of Nephilim did not die in the floodwaters. Echoes of their legacy resurface in strange places, in the ruins of megalithic structures that modern technology still cannot replicate, in the uncanny bloodlines of ancient kings, in the myths of gods who descended from the sky and took mortal wives. Could it be that the flood was only partially successful? What if the destruction of the Nephilim was never complete? Some traditions speak of survivors' hidden bloodlines, preserved knowledge, secret rituals passed down in shadows. Were there those who knew how to escape the flood? Or were some allowed to survive for a reason? And now, As we stand at the crossroads of genetic engineering, artificial intelligence, and the dream of transhumanism, we must ask ourselves, are we once again reaching for the forbidden fruit? The ancients believed that the Nephilim corrupted the earth, that their unnatural essence destabilized creation itself. But what happens when modern science begins to echo the same ambitions? Could it be that the elite of our world, those cloaked in power and wealth, are not merely chasing progress, but resurrecting an ancient agenda? Could the blood of the Nephilim still flow through royal veins? Could their consciousness, dormant for millennia, be awakening once more through silicon, code, and altered DNA? And if so, who is guiding it? In the next chapter, we journey into the realm of secret societies, hidden bloodlines, and the chilling theory that the Nephilim never left. They simply changed form. But if they walk among you, how would we even recognize them? They say myths die in the light of modern science. But what if science is only now catching up with ancient truths? In hushed corners of the internet, in encrypted forums and shadowy academic circles, a whisper persists: the Nephilim never truly vanished. Instead, they evolved hidden in plain sight. Some theorists point to the world's elite families, bloodlines that trace back thousands of years, never mingling with the common gene pool. Why? What are they protecting or preserving? There's a reason royal bloodlines are so fiercely guarded. Is it tradition, or is it something older, deeper, non-human? Some believe that behind the closed doors of secret societies, rituals are performed not in devotion to gods, but in communion with ancient ancestors. And the goal, not resurrection but reawakening. Reawakening dormant DNA that once ran through the veins of giants, the Nephilim. In recent decades, science has opened doors we were once warned not to touch. Genetic engineering, DNA manipulation, transhumanism, all paraded as progress. But behind the glossy curtain of innovation, something more esoteric unfolds. Projects like Cirespa offer not just cures, but the power to rewrite the blueprint of life. What if someone, somewhere, is using that power not to eliminate disease, but to recreate a bloodline? Some suggest that Nephilim DNA has been preserved, stored in clandestine biolabs, protected under the guise of classified research. A chilling possibility emerges, that humanity is not advancing, but being merged with something ancient, powerful, and inhuman. There are reports barely noticed by mainstream media of children born with extraordinary strength, rare anomalies in their skeletal structures, even inexplicable psychic abilities, coincidences, or evidence of an awakening lineage. The line between man and God has always been perilously thin. In the age of transhumanism, we aren't just crossing it, we're erasing it. And in doing so, are we resurrecting more than just potential? Could we be reviving a consciousness that once ruled the earth and perhaps never truly left? And here's the deeper, darker question. If the Nephilim are returning, is this their world we're inheriting, or are we merely caretakers until their dominion begins again? But maybe, just maybe, we've misunderstood the warning signs all along. What if the giants of old weren't legends to be feared, but memories to be uncovered? And if that's true, what else has been buried beneath the sands of myth, disguised as mere story? As we come to the close of this journey into the shadows of forgotten history, one thing becomes clear. The truth is never confined to a single book or whispered in one ancient tale. It lingers in the spaces between the stories we tell, hidden beneath layers of myth, legend, and time itself. The question we must ask ourselves is not whether the Nephilim existed, but what truths have been buried alongside them, obscured by centuries of silence and deliberate forgetfulness. If the Nephilim truly walked the earth, towering figures bridging the realms of gods and men, then what else lies concealed in the folds of our history? Are these accounts merely myths, the fabrications of ancient imaginations, trying to explain the inexplicable? Or do they represent fragments of a suppressed narrative, a lost chapter of humanity's origin that powerful forces have sought to erase from our collective memory. Imagine for a moment the implications. What if the boundaries of history, as we know it, are far thinner than we believe? What if the legends of giants are not just folklore, but echoes of a reality so profound it threatens to unravel the very foundations of what we think is true? These questions are not idle speculation. They challenge us to rethink the narratives we accept, to question the stories passed down through generations, and to dare to look beyond the surface. The Nephilim may be gone, but their shadow remains, a shadow that beckons us to uncover the secrets still hidden beneath the dust of time. As you reflect on this, I invite you to take a moment and share your thoughts. What do you believe lies behind these ancient tales? Have you come across stories or evidence that hint at a truth bigger than the history books admit? Your perspective matters, because together, we can piece together this mysterious puzzle. If this exploration sparked your curiosity, please like the video to let me know. Don't forget to subscribe for more journeys into the unknown, where we peel back the layers of history, legend, and mystery. And if you feel compelled, leave a comment below, share your theories, questions, or any stories you think belong here. Who knows? Perhaps the next piece of the puzzle will come from you. This quest for truth is not mine alone, it's ours. And together, maybe, just maybe, we can illuminate the shadows that have long concealed the secrets of the Nephilim and the mysteries of our ancient past. Thank you for watching, and until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and never stop seeking the truth that lies beyond the veil.